Hey guys, so we are to the last herb I have selected for this small section of digestive herbs, right? So, what if I told you these tiny little buds have started wars, made merchants unimaginably wealthy, sent ships across oceans, and were once worth more than many people could afford, probably even today? But today, they're one of the least expensive spices sitting in our pantry. But history tells a very fascinating and different story. So today, we're meeting one of the most fascinating plants in the spice world, our friend clove. Aren't they nice? They're so pretty. So, before we talk about history, because that is kind of my favorite part sometimes too, let's observe the plant, right? As always. So let's grab a good one that you guys can see. So it is, as you can see, dark brown, right? They are hard, woody in nature. And if you look closely, you see this side over here, it's a little stem, right? And if I turn it around, you can see the little rounded top. It almost looks like a tiny nail. Funny enough, the word clove comes from the Latin word clavus, meaning nail. My fourth grade Latin teacher would be very impressed with me. And if you were to crush one gently, immediately the aroma fills the air. It's warm, it's sweet, it's spicy. Just about everybody has experienced some version of clove. But it is amazing to me how that one little tiny bud can pretty much perfume an entire room. Every time I unscrew this top, the whole porch smells like clove. But, so, here's something that might actually surprise everyone. Clove is not a seed. It's definitely not a bark, right? That would be a weird bark. It's not a fruit. It's an unopened flower bud. So there's the flower. So when they're still growing, these beautiful shades of pale pink and red buds pop out, right? And so before the flowers ever have a chance to bloom, they're carefully picked by hand, so a very manual process, if you will, and they're dried in the sun. And as they dry, they shrink and they harden, and they turn into this deep brown color we're familiar with. I'm always like wondering, like, who was the first person to do that? But anyway, the spice in your kitchen is actually a flower that never was allowed to open, right? And for those that are curious, I'm going to throw you up a picture of what the flowers would look like if they were allowed to open. So, clove comes from an evergreen tree that loves tropical climates. For centuries, they grew naturally in only a handful of tiny islands in Indonesia, known as Spice Islands, right? And the entire world's supply of cloves once only came from those very few small islands. And that is what jacked the price up on them so much. Now, today, cloves have branched out and are grown in places like Madagascar, Tanzania, Sri Lanka, and other tropical regions. But their story all begins at those teeny tiny islands. So let's all go back in time, if we will, right? And we're back 100 years, and Amazon doesn't exist. I have mixed reviews about that. And you can't go to the grocery store. And if you want cloves, you better know a good merchant or have a nice ship that you can travel thousands of miles, right? So these people literally crossed deserts, dangerous oceans. The European nations competed fiercely for control of the spice trade. First, the Portuguese arrived, then the Dutch, and then the Dutch East India Company eventually controlled much of the clove trade, protecting it so fiercely. They destroyed clove trees growing outside their controlled areas to keep prices high because they're smart. So think about that, right? Entire economies were established and built off of one little teeny tiny flower that was never allowed to open. Now, of course, cloves taste wonderful, but people valued them for more than flavor. Yeah, they were used to season their foods, of course, but they perfumed their homes, like sprinkled it in carpet and stuff, flavored desserts, and they were used in food preservation right before refrigeration began. And they're a nice little breath mint. And traditional herbal systems around the world appreciated cloves for their warming nature and their role in comfortable digestion. And that's how they land here in our series of herbs. So you're starting to figure out that one of my favorite things about studying herbs is not just the plant. I think to understand the plant, you have to understand the cultures that arrive around this plant, how other people see this plant, right? So in India, cloves are part of warming spice blends, curry, right? Middle East, they're in rice dishes, meats, and dessert. And in Europe, they're usually associated with like mulled ciders, baked goods, holidays tradition. And then in North America, you usually find it in the all favorite pumpkin spice, right? Gingerbread and apple ciders, right? So different cultures, different recipes. I actually quite enjoy them in a simmer pot, you know, just to make the house smell nice sometimes too. So if you've ever really thrown any clove in a pot for any reason, you realize that it doesn't take a lot of clove to season anything, and that's because cloves are so naturally aromatic. And those oils are what give cloves their unmistakable fragrance and bold flavor. It's also why whole cloves stay fragrant for a surprisingly long time if you store them properly. So long before people were using it as holiday spice and other things, it was used in traditional herbalism. Herbalists included cloves in their warming digestive teas and seasonal spice blends. I even have a recipe where I use it in mouthwash. They were traditionally enjoyed after meals to support comfortable digestion and were valued for freshening your breath, right? So your tummy gets better and your breath smells nice, right? So again, this is not one of those culinary herbs that reminds us that our kitchen and our apothecary used to be not so separated as they are today. So if you can, I always prefer you to buy whole cloves instead of ground. Whole cloves keep their aroma much longer because the bud protects the aromatic oils inside. I want you to store them in an airtight container away from sunlight. And when you need them, grind only what you need. And you'll be rewarded with a richer aroma and flavor. So, for those that like hands-on experience, I recommend that you take one whole clove from your spice cabinet, and I want you to look at it closely. And I want you to notice the stem, right? And then I want you to see the little flower that never opened, right? And then I want you to crush it between your fingers. I know it sounds brutal, doesn't it? And then I want you to close your eyes, and I want you to take a deep breath and just understand the plant. Understand the value that you have being able to get access to these things so easily now too, right? So today we met clove, the tiny unopened flower bud that has crossed oceans, shaped empires, inspired exploration, and became one of the world's most treasured spices. It's a reminder that sometimes the smallest things leave the biggest mark on history. So next time you decide to make a cider or maybe a mulled cider, remember it's not just a spice, right? It's a remarkable plant with an extraordinary story. Now, that is where I'm going to bring the most familiar, right, digestive herbs to a close. There's more, and we will circle back to other herbs that we didn't touch on. But I think we're going to move into a new body system now. The next video you see that will come out after this one is going to be the formulation video for the digestive herbs. We're going to talk about some teas you guys can formulate. some tinctures, the when, whys, and where, a few scenarios to kind of help you understand the synergy between these digestive herbs. And then we're going to take off on our next body system to see what more we can learn. So I do hope that you enjoyed this one. And until next time, guys, I want you to stay rooted, stay curious, and as always, keep growing in grace.